Namaskar. In its eventful journey post independence, India had, on the one hand, seen various ups and downs, and on the other hand, had achieved and missed several milestones. India is a unique country. At any given point of time, many centuries coexist in India, and given its vastness, that makes administering it an unique experience. I belong to the generation born in free India that had grown with the country post independence. We have encountered many situations, perhaps except directly going through the pangs of partition. Even listening to those stories was horrifying. The partition of India, either by the design or as a conspiracy, has left an unfettered wound on the future of this subcontinent. It still haunts us in the form of religious polarization. In the above background, someone having spent almost 4 decades in the public service as an administrator, out of the over 6 decades of coming into this world, I feel privileged to share with you a small part of India's journey at 75. It is not possible to cover everything, but my endeavor is to cover whatever I can in an objective manner. During these years, one had seen several changes and witnessed strides made and sometimes failures in various walks of life by the country. At present, we in India are passing through a difficult time due to COVID-19 pandemic. It is a grim reminder of inadequacies in our system, calling for urgent corrective actions. I have organized this conversation in parts. First part of my conversation will be discussing salient features of India's journey of the last 75 years. Second part, according to me, what are the pressure points which can impinge the growth of this country? And third, I would suggest, in my humble way, whatever ways possible I think are the important points for uh, for the country to consider. First of all, I take this opportunity to remember and pay my respectful homage to all the freedom fighters who got us independence from the British yoke in 1947. While discussing various issues, I would like to emphasize the progress made on two main planks of our freedom movement. Our freedom movement was basically based on Swaraj, that is self rule, and Suraj, that is good governance. Let us see what is the status of these two things. Yes, indeed, power was transferred from the hands of Britishers to Indians in 1947. But it is an irony. Even after passage of so many years, the core of our administration remains inspired by colonial mindset. It is a fact. So one can safely make an observation that attainment of Swarajya had been achieved to a significant extent, but not to the full. Insofar other component is concerned, Surajya, that is good governance, is still at best the work in progress. Coming back to our narrative, India is a young country, but an ancient civilization. We possess remarkable religious, linguistic, and socio-cultural diversity unparalleled anywhere in the world. This diversity is our strength as well as weakness too. Strength, as a common thread of Indianness, runs across the length and breadth of the country, and weakness, as it makes us susceptible for exploitation by the unscrupulous elements. Our economic growth story had been slow, but steady in the initial 4 decades, with several internal and external problems accentuated by the Chinese aggression of 1962 and wars with Pakistan in 1947, 65, and 71. Indian economic growth is taunted as Hindu rate of growth. India opted for the middle path, means neither capitalist nor communist, post-independence. These years were spent in managing quota, permit, license Raj in the name of guiding both the public and private investments towards so-called gainful productive areas. For the benefit of those of you who have born after this, we can call them millennia children. This was the era of scarcity, from the shortage of food grains to petroleum products. Everything was in a short supply. One has to empathize with the people who, for getting certain goods and services, which we today's generation take it for granted, was tedious. If you need some few bags of cement, you have to take a permit for repairing your house. Similarly, a Lambretta scooter, you have to book, and waiting period for purchasing was 5 to 7 years. Ambassador car, which was manufactured in India, and it was considered as the ultimate symbol of power, did not even change anything or made any improvement for almost 3 decades till Maruti came to India. Similarly, small things, getting a cooking gas, telephone connection used to take many years. Even for a refill of cylinder, one has to stand in long queues and wait for a month. Similarly, most of the goods were under controlled regime. Breaking these queues was possible either approaching some MP or MLA for their discretionary quota or taking shelter of black market. The scarcity situation of any goods, services even now brings most of humanity worst in our country. We are seeing today what is happening. On the positive side of this period, it was primacy of public sector institutions providing inexpensive but quality educational and health services. No doubt, availability and access to these services or institutions was limited and relatively difficult. The next wave of institutional development led to unregulated, or rather underregulated, proliferation of expensive healthcare and educational institutions in the private sector. Privatization of health and education first started in southern states and later spread to other parts of the country. This privatization had twofold impacts. First, investment in public sector institutions became negligible, putting them on the ventilator. And second, cost of seeking these services skyrocketed. On the education front, one important policy failure was that none of our educational institutions could compete on any count with the best in the world. We also failed to stop exodus to foreign countries of our students who were not able to get admission in Indian institutions. So much money is wasted. In the late 17 and 80s, Tamil Nadu was, perhaps if my memory is not failing, was the first state, followed by Andhra Pradesh, started supplying subsidized rice and other commodities. You will be surprised that country-made liquor to poor and vulnerable was also subsidized in the then Andhra Pradesh. The number of people getting subsidized commodities is more than the total population or number of households of some of these states. On top of it, many eligible families are still deprived of ration card. You go to any city, any town, any village, you will find the households not having ration cards. And on the other hand, total number of the ration cards issued in many states is more than the population or number of households. Depending on electoral calculations, most states supply free or concessional electricity and water. Not this. Policy flip-flops are also quite common. There are states which first started concessional supply of liquor to complete prohibition at different points of time. Coming to success stories, food security, nuclear, space, solar power, poverty alleviation, and telecom are some of the sectors making country proud. Tremendous good work had been done by individuals in various fields, but making systemic changes remains a big challenge. Now I will come to pressure points. Unless we take corrective actions, this is going to be very difficult to control. Number one is the population of India is going to be the biggest pressure point that can negate all our efforts. Let us see some numbers. At the time of independence, the population of India was 36 crore as compared to global population of 256 crore. In 2020, that is the latest figures which are available, India's population has become 137 crores as against global population of 780 crore. During last 7 decades, the global population had increased 3 times, while Indian population has increased 3.8 times. So, for all the children born, we have to provide a school, we have to provide hospitals, we have to provide employment opportunities. And if you see India, we are a resource scarce country, as 2.4% of the global land area supports 16.7% of the global population. People talk about democratic dividend in a country like India. It can only be obtained with high quality and productive human resources. A particular point of time, people have certain standards. So in case of India, even to maintain the same standards of quality of life, one has to do relentless work because our numbers are increasing in view of growing population and higher expectations of people. As I said, providing gainful employment and livelihood is going to be another challenge, having direct impact on law and order and maintaining peace and tranquility in the society. Fourth thing is disruptions. They are caused by both man-made, artificial, or natural. In the years to come, technologies such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and many others are going to cause unprecedented disruption of both blue collar and white collar jobs. You will be surprised that things like robotic surgeries, computer aided design and manufacturing, 3D printing can reduce or replace any number of professionals, both white collar and blue collared. Having said this, what is the way forward for the country? I will suggest, because due to shortage of times, you can't say so many things. I will dwell on 5 points. Whatever is the public expenditure made, whether by a local body or by a state government or government of India, we should improve quality of public expenditure. worth each rupee, what are you going to get out of it, that has to be ensured. In this connection, first and foremost thing is avoid cost and time overrun of the project schemes. Why it happens? I will give you one example. You will wonder. A project of 7,500 crore has to be completed in 5 years, and every year allocation made is 75 crores. So with the current rate, current estimates, it will take 100 years for that project to complete. Whatever 75 crores per annum you are spending is not going to give any result. So these kind of expenditure have to be controlled. Next point is monitoring. We have to do very close monitoring and fixing responsibility and accountability, because in our society, in our system, accountability and responsibility is very fluid. In this connection of improving quality of public expenditure, I would say instead of input or output based systems, we should adopt outcome based systems. I will give you example of primary education. What is the difference between two systems? In the input based systems, we talk about number of schools, number of teachers, number of students who dropped out, and different ratios. While the outcome based system emphasizes on the level of proficiency in reading, writing, and mathematical skills, what is known as 3 R's, acquired by the number of students. So, first and foremost thing is whatever budget is there, we should improve quality of public expenditure. My next point is governance is a function of individuals, institutions, and processes. Individuals, institutions, and processes. Individuals, public servants either could be elected or could be selected. So those individuals who are opting for or who are being chosen for the government public service should have character, capability, caliber, and a proper conduct or good conduct in all walks of life. There is a tendency nowadays that spoil system. Like if I like you, I straight away appoint you to so and so place. There is no transparent selection and honest election process in the country. Institutions also should try to build trust and integrity. They have to reinvent themselves, whichever institutions, let us not name anything particular, for restoring people's confidence to ensure rule of law and faith in the system. And last in this series is processes. You see, you go to any government offices, the process will be there, but without any result. Human and simple processes designed on the basis of having trust on citizens is the, I will develop this theme by saying unshackle the system. Innovate, improvise, and improve. There should be only a red list of things which you cannot do or you are not supposed to do. Rest of everything should be as per the prescribed guidelines, and people should self-certify. If someone gives wrong information, law should take its course. But this approval process for everything from desk to desk, from table to table, that is bane of India. My fourth point is society should be well prepared to meet various challenges. These challenges could be internal as well external. These could be local, these challenges could be global. A society which is well prepared, that nation really becomes powerful. Now, threats could be of several types, could be nuclear threat, chemical threats, biological threats, and cyber threat. There could be social engineering, social unrest, externally sponsored or internally sponsored. So society from the lowest habitation level to state and national level should be prepared to cope up with these challenges. Climate change is another thing which is going to lead to increased intensity and frequency of adverse climatic events. Means what in simple language? It is increased number of earthquakes, increased number of cyclones with higher intensity. So we have to be ready for all these eventualities. And my fifth point is about the environment, to pay requisite attention on already stressed environmental resources, namely air, water, land. This requires paradigm shift in our approach towards management of natural resources. To conclude, I would say in a democracy, people are the real masters. They deserve a responsive and an accountable system of governance. Both elected and selected representatives of people are meant to serve the people and devote themselves to improve the quality of life of citizens. Any system is as good. You say presidential form of government, this form of government, that form of government. According to me, any system is as good as the individuals who man it or manage it. And lastly, I would conclude by saying people centric governance is only possible in a country with governance centric people. If people desire, if they ask for good governance, only then you get good governance. If citizens don't become responsible and vigilant, Suraj will continue to remain elusive. Thank you very much. I hope it made some sense. Thank you.